Well, good day, and congratulations to the 2013 Alaska Chamber of the Year, right?
Yeah.
Good job. Great job. It is great to be back with you and to see legislators here, not only from Chugiak-Eagle River, but from the Valley. Rep. Newman, welcome, and Senator McGuire from Anchorage, welcome. It's good to be with you all. It feels a little, you're talking about intimidation. It feels a little intimidating to be here when the legislators should be here reporting to you. And I am fully aware that you are our employer, and that's why we're here. We're here to report on what we're doing and how we can better serve you in the future. This group here of legislators worked with me this past year to put more money in your pockets beginning this month. How many of you know what that is? You know what that is? It's your payroll tax. The unemployment insurance trust funds are solvent, so your taxes are going down as employers and employees to the tune of about $90 million. The government doesn't need it, and you should keep it. That's basically that's my philosophy, and the legislators here that are here supported that effort as well, and they deserve your thanks. A couple things I want to just bring to your attention before we get into questions, because I much prefer the interaction and you hearing, me being able to respond to what's on your mind and you hearing directly from me about those topics. But it's clear to me our economy is growing, and the track we're on is a good one. Yesterday I went to a small welding shop in Anchorage, about 20 people. They've been around for 40 years, but they were kind of, as the owner described it to me, kind of lurching from winter to winter because the winter season was always pretty slow. And I saw, yesterday when I walked in there, I saw about 20 guys working, busy with all kinds of projects from working on welding environmental equipment and tanks onto truck for tundra work this winter, to drill, bit work and kind of the tool work for the downhole work on the North Slope, to welding rails onto stairs, and just really busy. And what the owner told me was that this is the first time in years that he can actually see work for years to come, and he's talking 4 to 7 years that he already sees happening. And this is not just in South Central. I saw the same thing in Fairbanks. I've seen the same thing in the Valley. And I got to tell you, the More Alaska Production Act, SB 21, is working to bring work and jobs to Alaskans. And I want to say thank you for your support of that effort too. Now, as you know, the budget was released. As governor, I proposed a budget to the legislature. By the Constitution, it says the governor must do that by December 15. I did that timely, and they now have the chance to go into the legislative session the third week of January and begin taking up that budget. It is a time of lower revenues than we thought we had in the spring, and I want to kind of debunk a few of the myths about that, because when the price of oil dropped, we thought it was going to be $111 according to the best estimates of the time in the spring, and it went to $105 per barrel in terms of the estimate for fiscal year 15 for the next fiscal budget year coming up. The naysayers on SB 21 were really quick to say, see, we told you so. We told you that this new tax reform effort would result in lower revenue. But the truth is, this lower revenue is under ACES, okay? It's under More Alaska Production Act. The revenue from both at $105 a barrel is very similar. It's just about even. And if you go to $104, $103, $102 per barrel, Alaskans are better protected under the More Alaska Production Act. We actually get more revenue under the new tax regime at lower oil prices. And you say, how can that be? I thought this was all about the supposed giveaway by the state, but that was such a false notion. Let me tell you what happened. Big picture. Big picture is we were not competitive at high oil prices, so we lowered the taxes on the companies at higher oil prices, and we raised them at the lower oil prices to create a more balanced and more competitive environment. That's what we're seeing now as oil prices are falling. We're not only seeing the benefit from new investment coming into the state that I spoke to, the billions of dollars that have been committed since the More Alaska Production Act passed. We're also seeing the benefit of better protection for Alaska's treasury from more revenue at these lower prices. So real benefit there. On the budget side of things, lower revenue means we're going to spend less. And I heard that loud and clear from legislators. I've pushed that myself across the years, but the budget I proposed is $1.3 billion less than we are currently spending. How can we do that? We are going to do something, I believe we are going to do something as legislators and as your governor that the Congress and the President are unable or unwilling to do. We are going to address the biggest cost driver in the operating budget of the state government. What is that? That's the unfunded pension liability. It's not a sexy topic. It's not a topic that everybody's burning to, got to deal with this. But it would be akin to the Congress and the President addressing and making sustainable the Social Security system. That's how important this is. And let me just brief you quickly on why. In years past, the state had pension systems that were changed effective 2006, but we still owe the debt for those pension systems. That debt is about $12 billion with a B. And we are making annual payments against that unfunded pension liability every year right now, and those payments are escalating. It's like we have a debt and we have escalating payments. This year's operating budget contained a payment of $630 million for a past obligation, okay? I mean, that squeezes our schools, that squeezes our public safety, that squeezes every element, our capital projects, every element of the budget. It's not just $630 million this year, though. It escalates. We're on a payment plan that goes from $630 million this year to $703 million to $760 million the next year, all the way up to $1.2 billion for one line item in the operating budget. Currently, so how do we address it? Because every year we wait, we spend more, and we squeeze the rest of the budget more. What do you do in your household when you have a debt, but you have some savings as well? Well, you want to lower your payments. That's what we want to do. We want to say we have $17 billion in savings, so budget reserve funds, not permanent fund. That's off the table. That's solid in there. But we have the statutory budget reserve and the constitutional budget reserve. We have $17 billion between those accounts. If we take $3 billion out of the 17, if we take $3 billion, pay down the debt, we can have $500 million fixed payments across the next 25 years. So instead of paying $1.2 billion some years from now, we'll pay $500 million. 2 years from now, instead of paying $760 million, we'll pay $500 million. We will realize real savings real quick if we are able to work together as legislators and the governor on getting this debt paid down and getting on a fixed payment plan. There's another real good reason for it, not just because it makes financial sense, but at the end of last session, I went back to New York and I visited with the ratings agencies. Those agencies like Standard & Poor's, Moody's, Fitch, they're the ones that give us our credit rating as a state. The credit rating is important because if we maintain our AAA credit rating, we pay less on the debt we have. The interest rate is lower for us because of our AAA rating. They said the one risk that we had to our credit rating, because they believe like we do that SB 21 is going to be good for the state. They think that this unfunded pension liability is the single greatest threat to our AAA credit rating. It's the only risk that they really identified to us. And we are now in the bottom 9 states on all the ratios they use to gauge how healthy your pensions are. So we need to shore up the pension system, but we also need to create an environment where our biggest cost driver is just stopped dead in its tracks. So that's what I'm proposing to legislation. It takes a while to explain. It's not an easy bumper sticker, but it makes sense, and it's just smart money management. In terms of the budget, another piece that I am pursuing is the digital teaching initiative, sometimes called digital learning, but across our state, we have the capacity to have teachers teach interactively across classrooms. It's already happening in several areas around the state. But for example, in Fairbanks, West Valley High School in Lathrop, you got one school that doesn't have enough kids to justify a teacher in that particular AP class. They had 8 kids in that class. They had 20 or 22 in the other class. So what do? They've got a teacher now with computer screens and cameras who interacts personally, not only with the class in front of him, but with the other class at West Valley. The same thing could be done between Eagle River and Chugiak The same thing could be done between the Anchorage School District and Kipnuk. For rural communities, we can actually offer greater access to those quality courses that they don't have access to. And in the urban districts, we can increase that access as well, but also create efficiencies where those don't exist today. So it's not just about, when you think of distance learning, it's not distance learning in the traditional sense. It's not dumping a bunch of text on a kid, having them read it, do the test and send it by email. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about live interaction with a teacher in a different location. I actually did this at the University of Alaska Southeast. It was really exciting. I had a mining operations class. I had 12th graders at University of Alaska Southeast, and I had 3 other community locations. I think one was, might have been Akachuk, another one was Kipnuk, and then there was one in the northern part of the state. But effectively, I had 3 computer screens in front of me. I had camera over the top of me, so anything I was doing with my hands could be seen. Camera in front of me. I was able to call on kids in all 3 communities, plus the kids in front of me. I mean, it's amazing how much we can open up, how much opportunity we can open up for our kids by doing this. And our goal is to get a 90% graduation rate and create greater opportunity for our kids. This is one way that I'm asking legislators to join me in doing that. So I'm going to just stop there and have that interaction that we promised. But I just wanted to give you a kind of a taste of what legislators are going to be dealing with. There are so many other issues on the table related to our economy, related to education and public safety, infrastructure and the like. But let's have that discussion now, and I may call on legislators to answer your questions too.
I'll start. The person-choice proposal sounds really intriguing. Do you see pushback from any segments within the state?
Not from within the state, but it's a tough thing for legislators, and I'll say it for you. It's a tough thing for legislators because I used to be the co-chair of Senate Finance Committee. I used to have to write the budget for the Senate and get support for it. It's a hard thing for legislators to move that kind of money off the table and out of reach because there are questions about what if we run out. Because our budget, our savings are the shock absorbers for lower oil prices. And that's a legitimate concern, there's no question about it. But my answer to that right now is, when is there a better time? We have $17 billion in savings right now. We need $3 billion to move over into another savings account and take that off the table. But immediately, it would cut our operating budget for years to come, and it would shore up our pension systems and make good on that obligation.
Thank you, Governor, for coming and your remarks. I wondered if you would like to talk a little bit about your Medicaid decision, but before you do, there's been some press in the daily news and some very negative remarks. I just want to say we honor you for not lashing back. I read with dismay some of the rhetoric that has been sent your way and others in this room sent their way. I think that's a very wonderful thing that you have a lash out. I'd like you to talk a little bit about the decision. Has anything changed since you made it?
You bet. And again, this is not a bumper sticker. I mean, this is a decision that I thought very carefully about and took very seriously and take it seriously. Because the allegation that there are 43,000 people who you are led to believe have no health care at all because they have no coverage, that's something that I take seriously. Government has an obligation in our society today to the most needy, most vulnerable of our population to try to give them that hand up. At the same time, the more I dug into that initial conclusion, the more I found out how false it is. And then the more I realized how the debt of billions of new federal dollars were going to be placed on our kids and grandkids. And I began to weigh those together. So let me start back at the kind of the front end. Of the 43,000, there are 17,500 roughly people who are eligible for the tribal health system. That's 100% coverage for their care. Now, the bad part of that is that the tribal health system is under pressure because the federal government is cutting them back as well. So the tribal health system, they want people who are eligible for Indian Health Service funds, they want them over on Medicaid because they're under a lot of pressure from federal government cuts. But the bottom line is that those 17,500 people have access to health care to 100% coverage. So we're left with 26,000 more. And I began to dig deeper and realize that we pay tax dollars to community health centers to provide primary care. There are 25 community health centers across Alaska. So we pay tax dollars for that. We're going into debt for that already. Our kids will be saddled with that already. But that's primary care. Okay, so if you go to an urgent care in town, you go to a primary care doctor, all of those diagnoses on the code sheets that you walk in and they check off, oh, you got a, what's it called? It's an infection, like a chest infection, bronchitis. They check the code for it, and you go pay for that, or your insurance company does. All of those codes, all those primary codes are covered for everybody who is unable to pay. They're not allowed by law to turn people away. Additionally, and at the other end of the spectrum, the people who are in that category go to emergency rooms. And there's a lot of care in between, but primary care, they go to emergency rooms, and we pay for that too. And our kids are going to pay for that. And we do it through higher healthcare costs and higher insurance premiums. Then in between the two, primary care and emergency room care, there is specialty care and behavioral health care as well. A little sketchier services there, and yet we still pay millions across those services as well. What I saw was some relief for the healthcare system, but I saw no relief for people who, like us, who are losing health insurance policies, who are paying more for healthcare insurance, and for our kids who will be paying the bill for those billions of new federal dollars coming in. Those were the factors that led me to say no to Medicaid expansion, but it also led me to create a plan forward for how to deal with the gaps in care. So the gaps between primary care and emergency room care, where people in that category of 43,000 who are of Alaska's poorest don't have that care. So that plan looks like this. I asked our commissioner within the next 3 months to identify those gaps, and then I'll work with legislators on how to address those gaps and target the funding. If we come up with those gaps and a plan for it, target the funding at those gaps rather than dumping a bunch of dollars into the system as a whole that's already strained. Secondly, we're creating a council to address Medicaid reform as it exists today to get more bang for the buck with Medicaid as it's currently structured. So that's the range of and the depth of considerations in that decision. It was not, you cannot, the bumper stickers are easy knee-jerk reactions, but unless you're thoughtful about these decisions and understand that people's health care and their lives are at stake, and so is our future and our kids' future, unless you're willing to weigh all of those and have serious discussions about it, you're really not, it's really difficult to take you seriously in those kinds. And so you're right, I've not struck back, and that's not in my nature much anyway, but it is in my nature to explain why I've decided something in representing you. So that's a little bit more than you asked for, but thanks for letting me explain it. So, yeah. If anybody else asks a question that's going to take me 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I'll let you know ahead of time.
Governor Parnell, I want to thank you so much for coming today. You've been on the board for over 20 years now, and not too many governors have made it out across the bridge to see us, so we're very appreciative. I have a quick question for you. Inquiring minds, especially from the Chugiak-Eagle River, want to know, tennis or hockey?
I'm more of a hockey guy, but but I've learned my lesson. I never get into local politics as governor, so.
Which just shows how
lot, but incessant in reminding people of issues that we face in the future. And I've been nagging about all of the entitlement programs that drive so much of the budget. There's several things that you and your administration are doing that are worthy of mention. Certainly, Medicare stuff, I appreciate what you're doing on education. We are working pretty hard on reducing the cost of transportation. Things are going on with DOT. And also, unprecedented, no other governor has taken the actions you have taken to protect our state from federal overreach. It seems like to me 16 or 18 suits that you all are pursuing, and also your efforts on one of our lives was off-the-scale abuse, child abuse, domestic violence, suicide. I appreciate what you've been doing on those things. Would you like to comment about those?
In less than 5 minutes? Or... No, I think that we as Alaskans have a wonderful opportunity. We are now in a place where our economic opportunity is growing. And it really is a time when we can also address some of these cancers that eat us from inside, like domestic violence and sexual assault. I mean, there's no reason why we should not be opening up that conversation as a people. It's not something that's comfortable. It's not easy, but it's so important to our survival and our health as a community and as a state. So I appreciate that. When it comes to the entitlement programs, the two biggest drivers of our budget are that pension liability, that unfunded pension liability, and then Medicaid, both of which I've talked about how we're addressing those and working with legislators to do it. So we're going to continue fighting to make sure that your money is spent wisely and that we remind people that federal money is not free.
Time out.
Okay, Governor, I'd like to personally say thank you for pushing the initiatives for keeping children in Alaska by offering scholarships to the University of Alaska.
Yeah.
My daughter will be receiving 2 of those, and she just got her acceptance letter today. Is there more of that going to be? Are we pushing those programs forward to try to keep our students here in Alaska? And my second question is, will you be in Eagle River in July to cook in the salmon cooking?
So I'm really proud of Eagle River High School and Chugiak. You know, between the two schools, you've got about 245, 250 kids that have earned those performance scholarships and are using them in state. So that's about a 45% rate of usage, which is one of the highest in the state. So you're doing great for kids who are applying themselves, taking more rigorous courses than the minimums required, and earning those scholarships. And these legislators here helped put that in place. It's something that I championed and we're very thankful for. We're seeing it increase academic achievement. We're seeing it decrease remedial needs by the university. Would like to see more application of it to the workforce development side of it and the job training programs. We want to make sure that our kids who are not university bound know that they have an option and a way to pay for job training programs too. That is a kind of a to be done moment. And then July, will I come? What was the date of that?
July 13th.
I always enjoy bear paw, so I'll be here one way or another. Okay. Yeah, but you notice how I didn't commit to a date and time yet, so I said I'll be here.
More questions? Welcome to Alaska.
Thank you.
Yeah, even guys born in California become governor of Alaska.
I wasn't born in California.
Okay.
No worries. Speaking of the job training, there's a disparity between individuals who are not disabled versus those with no mental disability in terms of employment employment rates and employment opportunities.
You bet.
What do you think Alaska can do differently?
I'd actually like your suggestions. I mean, I'd love to hear from you on how to do that. Do you have some ideas on? Oh yeah. So give me one or two right off the top. Why? How can we improve access for our developmentally disabled community? And by the way, my chief of staff, Mike Nizick, raise your hand, Mike. He's right here, so he's going to listen with me.
All right. Number one, there are benefits to employers that I don't think they're aware of by hiring people with developmental disabilities. Number two is we've got to start with the kids before they're out of high school, thinking in terms of what will I do when I grow up. There's not a whole lot out there right now.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Hi, Governor. And this may not be the right board, so to speak, or the right level of politics, but since the Governor's Board of the U.S. Instituted or adopted Common Core across the U.S., or at least in 48 of the states, as far as I know, Alaska did not adopt that officially, but yet it is still in the Anchorage School Board. They adopted Common Core. Can you speak to that disparity?
Yeah, let me go first to the. Go ahead and hand the microphone over there. This will be about a 20-minute response for you. No, it won't be that long. So when I first became governor, Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan made a trip to Alaska, and he came to my office to visit and talk to me about Common Core and about Race to the Top grants at the time. And I asked him, I just asked him point blank, what is your real goal with national standards? And he said, oh, we're not looking at just national standards. We want international standards for our kids to live by. And I said, no. I said, we will not be doing that in Alaska. Alaska will retain, and our communities will retain, the right to direct the education of our kids. It starts with the parents, and it's reflected out into the community and the state. So we did not apply for Race to the Top grants. We did not participate as part of the governing body that developed Common Core. We did monitor what happened. We were watching, it's kind of like being in the bleachers, watching what's happening on the floor while they develop the national standards. But at bottom, I said Alaska will retain our ability to direct education curriculum for our kids. And we've done that. The Alaska State Board of Education sets those curriculum standards. So they set standard. They raise the bar on graduation requirements and set standards. Now I will tell you, and local districts as well adopt their own standards as well. It's one thing to make, and this is again is where the explanation gets a little more in depth. But a Common Core standard includes things like, by third grade, a child should understand when to use capital letters and small letters. There's no reason not to adopt something like that. That's agreed on by everybody. And so what our state did is we adopted reading, writing, and arithmetic standards that in part reflects the same standards that the Common Core does, but we did not do the social sciences standards that were all the state board did not adopt those, which are the real controversial ones and the ones that cause me and all of us the heartburn. But at bottom, the state of Alaska and our local districts and our parents retained the direction of education. So that, on that basis alone, we are not a Common Core state and we did not participate. Now the next stage is testing to your standards. And we are developing our own test, drawing from about 5 different models out there for our test. So if you hear anybody say that we are doing something different, we are developing our own test. That's what directing the education of our kids is about, is that it's about local management of those choices and parental choices there. So that's another in-depth answer, but that's where we are. Thanks.
Governor.
Nice. You got a radio voice there too.
We couldn't have got to watch you and enjoy your presentation today, and I want to commend you on how accessible you made yourself. after your speech in the crowds. And I believe this is several years now that you've made sure the governor's booth is an AFA, and it was very well received. And your support of the Village Public Safety Program has got a tremendous amount of support in the community. Put on your radar that in next summer, National Congress of American Indians, which is on the lower, is bigger than AFN, is going to be hosted in Anchorage.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Include them. So we'd
Okay.
like to put that on your radar and maybe have you come speak to
thank you.
over 500 tribes that are very active on the federal level and on the state level, and very supportive of what's going on in Alaska.
Thank
but
you.
we really appreciate your accessibility.
I appreciate that. And let's thank you. I want to just address that for a moment, because in 2006 or 2007, we had about 43 village public safety officers in communities. That means that at the time there were almost 200 communities that had no law enforcement whatsoever. So if you were in trouble, if you had an assault ongoing and tried to call for help, it was days before you could get help. 43 officers in 2006, 2007 timeframe. If the legislature adopts the budget that I have put in place, we'll be at about 123. So that's a net increase of about 70 communities or so that have somebody in them that they didn't have before, and that's a huge improvement. That legislators have joined me on a annual basis with putting more village public safety officers into the communities and the necessary trooper support behind them. So we have a safer Alaska because of the direction from me, but also from your legislators and the legislative support for those efforts.
Governor.
Oh no! From the head table too.
Seriously, that's
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Last question.
Rodney Dangerfield up here. I'm trying to get serious for a moment. Well, as grandfather being, I'd like to thank you for keeping the torch open for business in the future. With that in mind, could you give a brief update on where we're at for getting the gas pipeline?
You like saying brief, don't you? You know, billions of dollars of projects, and he wants brief. Okay. If you were to travel on the Kenai right now, on the peninsula, you would see just a heightened level of confidence. It started with the tax credits, the jackup rig credits and the gas storage tax credits to drive more exploration in the inlet for natural gas. The legislature and I combined on that effort. But it also has heightened now as the producers, TransCanada on that large diameter project, announced Nikiski as the termination point for a gas line there on that project. And they've opened a land office as well with 3, maybe 4 people in it on the peninsula to acquire land around the Nikiski LNG terminal. So I'm seeing developing momentum there. And then on the other side, the legislature may put in place what was called House Bill 4 this year, which gave the Alaska Gas Line Development Corporation broader authority to participate in a gas line and get a gas line done in Alaska's interest. So I see both projects moving together, and I am cautiously optimistic that you'll see a path forward to a commercial agreement and even more progress on the gas line in the weeks and months ahead, because we're at a place where we've never been before. We're at a place where Alaska's interest can be carried in a gas line, and it has authority to build a gas line. And we have 4 companies aligned in moving forward that from the private sector side. We've never been in this place before, and it's pretty exciting. So I'm optimistic that about this effort this time. So listen, I'm going to wrap up and say I am thankful to be able to be here and be able to answer your questions. I'm also extremely grateful to be able to serve as your governor, and I look forward to spending a few days with my family in Juneau for Christmas. But after that, I look forward to being with you legislators in Juneau and continuing this effort. So thanks so much for having me and inviting me in. Thanks.